What is going on, Comic Fam? It's your boy, the Bearded Comic Bro, and I am joined by comic creators David Booher and Drew Zucker. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having us
How
on.
you doing?
This is
Yeah,
great.
I'm excited. So, David, I had you on. I think we figured out like a couple years ago when Volume 1 of Killer Queens came out. Drew, this is the first time, so I'm excited to just get to talk to you and have you be a part of the show. I always like to ask guests, and I know, David, you've been on already, but maybe if someone's new since it's been a couple years since I've had you on, how did you both get into creating comics? Like, was it something that you've always had a desire to do, or did it just, how did that start?
Drew, you can take it. You've got a nice fairy tale
So for
origin.
me, I grew up in a very artsy household. My grandmother was an art teacher. My dad was a location scout and photographer. My sister's a photographer. So it's always been something that was around. And then as comics were always around. And as I got older, I kind of drifted away from it. But then when I went to college, I specifically went to college to study sequential art, which is the whole bachelor's program on how to make comics. And from there, I just kind of stuck around and never really left. It is the medium that I enjoy making things in the most.
So cool. And David, just a little rehash then for you. How did you get into it?
I definitely did not go to school to write comics. I missed that boat, unfortunately. Instead, I went to school and became a lawyer, and I practiced law for about 17 years. And
When I got a real job.
And I got a real job writing funny books. I'm thinking back, and if our last interview was about September of 2021, my first day as a full-time writer was October 1st of 2021. So I just surpassed 2 years doing it full time.
I think it was one of those on the verge of it was maybe in the works for you, because then I remember pretty quickly after the interview you dropped that. I was like, oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, I had actually decided a few months ahead of that. Just sort of saw the runway, so I started planning for that. I had been writing for a long time, like a decade at least before that, TV, film, books. Started getting into comics when I started going to San Diego Comic-Con, and I did it for the film and TV stuff. And I just sort of looked around and I was like, what are these comics you speak of? And I always used to, yeah, what are these funny books? So I used to say that I came late to comics, but I just feel like that's wrong for two reasons. One is I actually read comics as a kid, but it wasn't like the single issues. It was Mad Magazine, Far Side, Sunday Funnies. It's all comics. It's all under the same umbrella.
Yep.
And then also saying you came late suggests that there's like a right time to come to comics, and you can start reading comics at any point in your life. I don't care what your age is. So I read Lock and Key. That was the one that kicked me off on this road of wanting to make comics.
Nice.
Yeah. So I set up my first book in 2015. It got published in 2017. And then Drew and I started our tumultuous relationship in about 2017, I want to say. Late 2017, early 2018.
17, 18, around there.
Yeah.
Because Canto came out in 2019. So we had been working on it for a while before that.
So I was going to ask, and that kind of leads right into it. How did you guys get connected? How did you team up then? Because I know, like you just said, you worked on Canto before, and now obviously you have a new book coming out. But how did this friendship, this comic marriage come together?
by me not being cautious about who I share IP with.
That's it. And me being relentlessly harassing him. No, so if I remember the whole sequence of events correctly, which is it's unlikely, but
no, we're going to hold you to it, David. This is law right now. You're a lawyer. You don't know.
I had an opportunity to do a short in an anthology. And I had been sort of around Drew on social media and sort of connected, via other people. And I liked his work. He had done something called The House, a horror book called The House, and I liked what he was doing. So I reached out to him and I said, Drew, do you want to work on this short? with me? And he said, no, I'm busy. I was like, okay, well, I guess that's it. And then after he got freed up, he pings me in my inbox with this drawing of this little character. And I was like, within a half a second of looking at that, I said, I don't know who this is. I don't know what this story is. But we are definitely telling it. That's how quickly I responded to this little knight that was in my inbox. And so Drew had a concept for a story and had been working it out. He'd been working on this concept for a long time. And I came in and I threw it all out and we started over again.
It sounds about right, Drew. Is that?
Yeah. Actually, he's got it. He's got it pretty much locked down. So it's funny because Canto actually came along 7 years before that encounter even happened. I did the drawing. I did the initial paragraph outline, and it just sat in a drawer. And then I was wrapping up the house at the time, but when he had reached out to me, we were at the tail end of production on it. And it was another 7-year slog to get that book done. And I just was like, no, I'm not taking on other stuff. I'm finishing this because I can't look at it anymore. And then, it just so happened that when I shared what would become Canto with David, that, he has this extensive Wizard of Oz knowledge. And it really kind of played directly into, all the strengths that he has as a writer.
Yeah.
So few, there are very few of them, but you play into
one or two.
You guys seem like you brought back most of the team from Canto to work on, this new endeavor. Is it something about working with people that you're familiar with? And is it just like a trust or a relationship? What was the reasoning behind bringing the team back?
Well, it's
they're all cheap.
Yeah, cheap.
Absolute lies.
That is yeah. So they're not. I mean, we trust them so much.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like Vittorio Astone, who is the colorist on Canto, he's colored a lot of Drew's covers that he's done for Marvel and DC. It was just announced and it's currently on Kickstarter. Me, Drew, and Vittorio are teaming back up for a short story that's going to be in the Monsterverse Declassified from Legendary Comics. So it's like the Godzilla, King Kong universe where we get to write a story. And so that team has come back together for that. It's just the level of trust that we have with Vittorio and Darren Bennett at And World Design for lettering that we knew we could go back to them. We keep going back to them because they hit their deadlines. We can afford them and they're great.
Yeah.
I bring Vittorio basically anywhere I can because, like David said, we trust him.
Yeah.
Not only do we trust him, the work is really good. He's reliable. When we've reached a point where he has worked with us for so long that 9 times out of 10, if I hand him pages to do, he'll nail it on the first try. And if he doesn't, he's always open to working with us and working through the process of getting stuff done. So both of us have been around now long enough that we've had our creative horror stories or where something didn't quite live up to what you wanted it to be. And when you find the people that, deliver every time, you want to keep them around.
Yeah. Yeah. It's cool to see, because people start to, there's something about comics where I think you start to fall in love with creative teams and, you follow them around. And so sometimes it is just a writer and the artist, but when you can see the whole team is back, you're like, okay, I know the product I'm getting as a consumer, which is kind of a cool thing too. As a fan, we know the level that it's going to be at because we've seen it before.
Yeah. And from our perspective, it's got a look to it that then becomes like a branding type thing. So, the audience will come along because it's this team, but then when the readers are going to this comic shop and seeing a huge wall full of comics that came out that Wednesday, they see this and they're like, wow, that looks a lot like Vittorio and Drew. It just gives you that vibe, which I think is fantastic. So it helps with branding to bring these teams back together and keep doing new and different things, in different stories.
Yeah. And it's something that I think is kind of missing right now. Like, you have a handful of teams, but nobody really, it's kind of rare that you even get the opportunity to do a long form run like what Canto's become, and then get to see that team come back and do something as small as, a 34-page one shot for, just a random IP idea that we developed on our own.
Yeah. So we haven't even gotten to talk about the feeding yet. You just showed up the picture, David. We're kind of doing this, the setup, the groundwork, and there it is. Looks so good. Now, I mean, this is just, it's naturally a follow-up to Canto, right? Since the whole team's back.
In the copy, in the marketing copy, we definitely emphasized that we were doing something decidedly more adult and scarier than Canto. We just keep hitting that home because Drew and I are huge horror fans. We've always been horror fans all our lives. And, that darkness seeps in a little bit with Canto, but it's definitely all ages. It's meant for kids and their parents to all read together. The feeding is not. It's definitely an adult horror story. But it was fun to foray into that and see, both Drew and I got to sort of spread our creative wings to tell a story that's not that's not a fairy tale. It's kind of it's a morality tale, but it's not a fairy tale.
Yeah. I mean, after so many years of doing Canto, I love doing Canto, but you need a break eventually. Right. And I also know that at a certain point after Canto, I probably will have to go back to drawing people full time. So I figured it would be a good idea to get some practice back in. But, both of us have notebooks full of story ideas. And committing to something the size of Canto is not only difficult from a creator end, it's difficult from a publisher end. And it's a huge time commitment. This is a really fun way for us to get to jump in and out really fast on something smaller while not overstaying our welcome on it, and not putting, not asking a huge commitment from readership, not asking a huge commitment from publishers. If it turns out that there is some sort of, mass, groundswell that people want more of this, we can always do it. But it's helpful to be able to jump back and forth.
Yeah. So what is the sell kind of for someone who wants to experience this kind of not all ages horror adventure? Do you have an elevator pitch, or are you guys kind of just letting people go in? How much can you tell while keeping people, wanting a little bit more?
Sure. So it's a one page. It's a 32-page one shot, which is on Zoop, and we definitely have the description on the page of what the story is about. It's about Nolan Ward, who is this day trader. He's a drinker, womanizer, casual drug user, partier, kind of not a great guy, right? But then you find out that he's been haunted all of his life by this painting that eats people, and it's shown back up in his life, and it's hungry again. So the story is about how he deals with that, how he confronts that in his life. You start realizing that a lot of the stuff that he does, drugs, alcohol, all that stuff, is to sort of suppress this phantom thing that's been stalking him all his life. And so when we meet him, he's an adult and it's come back. And then the story is about how he confronts that, how he deals with that. And it's very bloody and beautiful and crazy and wild. And I love how it has turned out for us.
Yeah. So Drew, obviously it was a little different styling of artwork for you. What was it like to just, getting to work on the story with the team, but say, getting to play in a completely different wheelhouse when it came to the art style for you?
So it's not so much a different wheelhouse, because I did a book called The House a couple of years ago, which was a World War II haunted house story. And that was kind of the project that actually, in a really roundabout way, visually, as far as storytelling and progression of my art, informed Canto. And then, so now I've had, 4 years of Canto to do. and then to come back to horror. So rather than it being something new, instead it was exciting because it was a chance to take all the stuff that I learned in the house and everything I've learned across Canto, which is a significant amount, and now apply both of them together and get to see what came out of it. And, you know, there definitely were growing pains coming back to drawing the real world, because I forgot just how much detail you have to populate backgrounds with in order to make it like, oh, this this actually feels like a real place. But, you know, outside of that, it was really an opportunity to push myself in a way that, you know, I get to on Canto, but it stretched totally different creative muscles.
So where did this idea then for the feeding come about? You know, was it whose idea was this? And are you okay? No, I'm just
he's not okay. He's not okay.
Not
someone check in on Drew after this interview, please.
Listen, I would keep talking to people, but the voices in my head never shut the fuck up. So this actually came from a nightmare I had. I've talked about this on other podcasts that I will occasionally dream very lucidly. And this was one of them. And generally, I don't remember a lot of these dreams. They kind of act as how a dream normally would be, where everything is out of sequence and it's just, you know you're in a dream, but it's all just a little bit funky. It doesn't make sense. For whatever reason, this dream had a little more structure to it than normal. And usually when I wake up, I usually forget about these things within about 30 seconds. It's difficult for me to kind of hold on to it beyond that. When I woke up from this, I kind of woke up and was like, all right, that wasn't fun. And I, in a mad dash, wrote down in my notes on my phone everything I could remember from it. And then from there, developed it into a more cohesive outline. The initial writings from the morning I woke up are the ravings of a madman. But I did the initial outline, and then when David got involved, he kind of took it and made it much leaner and meaner. So he streamlined a lot of, the more drawn out elements that I had in it, and instead just kind of trimmed it down to the bone so that it was as tight as it could be while adding certain elements into it that kind of helped push the story forward.
Yeah, we weren't interested. I mean, we love this idea, but we weren't super interested in launching some big multi-issue story with it. So we always were kind of looking at this one-shot structure.
Yeah.
And I think it's great because I drew on Twilight Zone, Creepshow, Tales from the Crypt, all of these anthology shows and movies that this could be like a segment from. And, maybe someday, we'll have the opportunity to create our own sort of Creepshow or Tales from the Crypt where this becomes one of the episodes that we collect and then into a larger volume. Maybe we'll have a host. Maybe we'll, have a framing story. The way we love those Creepshow and
I'm going to be like Todd McFarlane during the animated Spawn episodes in comics while talking to the audience.
Right.
In a suit. Because that's how I make comics.
Obviously.
That's so you kind of, this idea came about, you're like, hey, let's do it as a one shot. And so what was the mindset then of saying, hey, let's go to crowdfunding rather than bringing this, to, I know both of you guys have worked with a handful of traditional publishers. Like, so what was the mindset of like, let's just go crowdfunding with this one, and why Zoop?
Well, the first question is, the answer to your first question is, we got to keep all the rights. We get to keep all the rights. We don't have to split anything with anybody except for each other. And that is, it's been so fun to watch this evolution of crowdfunding that went from even 4 years ago, it went from, oh, that's the last place you go because no publisher wants your story, to that's the place you go because you can keep everything because publishers want too much.
Yeah.
And so this story,
publishers now go.
Yeah, and even the publishers are going there to do pre-orders and sort of cut out the distributor. So we never, I don't think we ever talked about taking it to a publisher. This has always been, our goal has always been to do it ourselves, see what happens. We have a roadmap in front of us, which is we want to crowdfund every variant cover that we're doing on Zoop. We've got an A cover, we've got a foil, and we've got this beautiful full black and white issue that showcases Drew's great line work on this, great art. Every one of those is branded with the Zoop logo. So once the campaign is over, those variants are going to be gone forever. So even if we decide to go the route of a publisher to do more wider distribution, it's going to be a different version, different variant of this story. So that was the one reason. And then Zoop, we've been talking with Jordan and Eric, who run Zoop, for a long time, and they've been wanting us to do something for a long time. And because our goal was 3,000, and as of the airing of this podcast, I sincerely hope we are above 6,000. So having doubled our goal, we knew that Zoop was a good platform for this. A larger project, it'd be a different conversation. But also, Kickstarter is so stuffed with comics campaigns.
Projects.
So many projects. So it's hard to cut through. At least with Zoop, it's an entirely different platform, and I think they have like 4 projects going right now, so you're not getting lost.
I also thought that, I personally didn't think that this would be an easy sell to a publisher. I think that the idea of a one-shot is it's a tough sell to ask them to commit to one comic and the resources that would require. So this gave us an opportunity to, like I said, we get to kind of dip our toe in and see, is this something worth pursuing beyond the feeding, or is this, something where we have a nice, a small group that's really supportive of what we're doing, and maybe this is just where we leave it going forward, or we keep bringing smaller stories like this to something like Zoop.
Yeah,
we have the luxury of me and Drew working together, so we don't take page rates. We just we rise and fall on the success of the book. So we're paying Vittorio, we paid Darren, but the great news is the book is finished. We even have, this is going to air after, I think, New York Comic Con, but we have a 100-copy variant that's a New York Comic Con sort of preview exclusive that we're using as marketing for the campaign. But we couldn't do that if we didn't have the money to have made the book already.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So this really is a campaign of pre-orders to pre-sell the book. So when it's over, we have this base of orders that we can then send the book out to.
That's so cool. Well, you both have kind of hinted at and mentioned of, kind of see how this does on a Zoop, and, maybe an anthology of these down the road, or some more short stories. Are there ideas like that are like you guys have discussed of like, see kind of how this is like that, you're working up some more dreams that you might turn into comics?
Yeah, we need more nightmares, Drew.
Dude, if you ever went through the notes in my phone, I would be committed immediately. We haven't spoken about anything specifically. I think we're both just desperately trying to keep our heads above water with the campaign and New York coming up. But, I'm sure that it will definitely come up again at some point. But I know, like I said, from my end, my phone's loaded up with ideas.
Yeah, and the way I envision it is if we do another campaign with another story, it's probably going to be that we'll do a second story and put it with the feeding and make it into a single volume, and that's like our next campaign. Instead of doing like two campaigns and then joining them, we would just probably add to it. I love the idea of calling the whole anthology the Night Gallery, having the curator be the crypt keeper, our crypt keeper, introducing these stories, and have something to do with, not necessarily, I guess, art, but also like, I don't know, something to do with, I guess art. and our relationship to art and horror and that sort of thing. And not all of them have to be about paintings and that sort of thing, but the idea being that the curator is showing you a gallery of sorrows and we're experiencing what's happening to these people.
Yeah. The world is kind of primed for that stuff. Cabinet of Curiosities was successful. Love, Death, and Robots has been successful. I mean,
Black Mirror.
Black Mirror. In the age of the physical Blu-ray market being gone, so studios don't have the luxury of kind of experimenting with smaller movies, that they're okay with failing and then finding homes in that market. That seems to be where people are going to for these smaller ideas. And, it says nothing about quality, because some of those shorts in those series are some of the best things I've stumbled across in a while. So I think it's something that is becoming more and more appealing across the board for media.
Well, and it makes sense as someone who I've had a lot of, crowdfunding creators on via Zoop or Kickstarter. And some have done anthologies, but some have been, issue 1, issue 2, issue 3, and those can be tougher to do on a crowdfunding. I feel like crowdfunding for one shots where you can have a story, then tell another story. People can hop in at any point then, even if you do tie it together down the road. So I feel like you guys have picked a perfect landing spot for the story you want to tell and create here.
We will see in 25 days. Currently, as of recording, we will see in 25 days, my friend. But so far, it's been great. We got really strong out of the gate, and I think we're going to continue strong. This is the notorious valley of the campaign. It's the middle. I think we're going to have a strong finish. I think we'll hopefully hit where we would like to hit, and then we'll see. It's a significant amount of work. Drew has already been through it once with a house. I've never been through it before, and I feel like I am getting just like 1% of how much work it is to do a crowdfunding campaign, because we're finished and we have support with Zoop and all those different things.
Right.
So I can't imagine putting a book up like this onto crowdfunding without it being done. It just sounds like so much extra pressure. And this is already one of the most crowdfunding. I don't care if you have the most unsuccessful crowdfunding campaign ever. It is the most exhausting thing in the world in publishing, because you're the one-man band. Yeah. And I will give it to Zoop. It is much easier than it was the first time around on Kickstarter, because the support system is so good within the company and the website. But, it is crowdfunding. David was like, we should crowdfund it. And oh God, do I have to do this again? But,
I mean, it's okay. It's been okay.
It's been great. Yeah. It really has. And, at the end of the day, it's been, I think, really the best decision for the book so far. Yeah. I think that as people have kind of stumbled to it, they're starting to see what it is we're trying to do.
Well, it makes sense, that a crowdfunding a book is going to be a lot more of a challenge of just everything that goes into it. I mean, you are the publisher, you're the editors, you're everything, you're the promotion team, you're doing it all. And so I don't envy anybody. I have the utmost respect when people crowdfund books, because I'm like, man, I've done enough interviews and know what goes into it that I'm like, my hats are off to you.
Go ahead, Drew.
I warn everybody in my life that for 30 days, you're all going to be sick of seeing the same thing over and over again. But tough, you don't like it, go and buy it.
And then you're still going to see me post about it.
You're still going to see it.
I kind of take the opposite attitude. I'm like, I stop myself from posting things like, oh, you're going to get sick of me in the next 30 days. Because I just wanted to keep the positivity going. So it's more about excitement. I'm excited about this. That's why I keep posting about it. And so if people get sick of me posting, they'll just scroll past it. We all are trained to do that anyway. And we'll get back to regularly scheduled programming. But there's never going to be a point where I'm going to be like, oh, you're going to get sick of me, because I I'm a monster, and I never think anybody's going to get sick of me ever. So that's sort of my attitude. But I'll tell you, there's no preparation. Nobody had prepared me for the first 24 hours, which is you launch, and then you literally don't sleep, you don't eat,
stare at it,
you don't change clothes, you don't do anything, but you have that stupid website up, and you just watch the number. And you just watch, and every time somebody backs, there's a backer, it's like this endorphin rush, and then there's a lull, and there's not a backer, and it's just a crash. And so anybody who studied crowdfunding for the very first time, prepare for those first 24 hours to be the most emotional roller coaster of your life, because you just don't know. You're going to be glued to it. You don't know what to expect. So that's that. I'm glad to say we're about 4 days in as of this recording. I'm feeling much better about myself, my life, taking showers and eating and doing everything that I normally should be doing.
He's outside. He's seen the sun.
I saw the sun for the first time.
You've got a healthy glow.
Yeah. So that's it. I mean, and really it's about, especially since we're the two-person hype squad, it's all about building your audience outside of the platform, outside of the campaign, because that's who's going to be coming in. I can probably look at the list of backers that we have right now, and I know probably most of them personally because they're on social media or whatnot or wherever we meet, but they're people who are supporting us. So we brought them to this new platform, and that's going to be key because small books, even me and Drew, who I feel like we're building our profile in the comics industry, and we've been successful at that, and still we launch this campaign. It's like it's a constant fight to convince people to
get attention,
back it. Yeah.
I will say we launched against two major campaigns, one of which we are also a part of. The Zorro book launched on Kickstarter and has apparently been a behemoth. And then Monsterverse launched with Legendary, and we're both in that. And, there's definitely a finite amount of money in the pot that can be allocated into these things. But even with that, us being out there and delivering a consistent product, I think is really what has helped to drive that initial group that's come into the book. And, that is probably the biggest difference between this and the first time I went through it is that, Whatnot's a thing now. And, social media has completely changed from the last time I went through this. And that's probably one of the most exciting parts about this is we're obviously really involved with Whatnot. How do you take the Whatnot, the crowd we built on Whatnot, and how do you translate it into something like Zoop and vice versa? How do we bring the book into Whatnot and, let these two ecosystems kind of feed each other?
Yeah. Well, it has to be an interesting experiment as well, because like you said, crowdfunding has definitely changed. Like I got into doing interviews and podcasting in 2020. And like, that's why I think you started to kind of really see the shift of, people going to crowdfunding, and then, even publishers looking at crowdfunded books and saying, oh, it was successful here. Maybe we'll pick up your book because you have a built-in audience, and hopefully. And so
that's what happened with The House. We were the one-man band for that book for years. And then Dark Horse, we literally sold nearly 1,000 copies over the course of a couple of years. We were coming to the end of the print run, and we were like, I don't really want to do another pay for this or store it. And we went to Dark Horse, and Dark Horse was like, oh yeah, no, we'll definitely take that. And then it just blows the doors open because it's a totally different readership that you're dealing with.
Yeah, and I think for the Feeding, my gut is that this is just the beginning of the life of this story and not the end once the campaign is over and we fulfill it. So I think folks getting on now are getting on the ground floor, and I think there are going to be other opportunities like bringing it to the comics market, opportunities for an adaptation, TV and film. I'm active in those areas. So it's nice to have those rights because
right?
As soon as something gets announced, these people are going to go crazy for it and look for this book. So,
yeah. Well, so just if people are listening, when's, from the time, I guess, when's the campaign ending? What's the end date so people can hop on board to make sure they check out this book?
I believe it's November 4th, I want to say. November 5th, something like that.
November 5th. Good date to end on.
Remember the 5th. So, gang, get in. If you're watching this, get in now in October. Well, anything, obviously I'll have the links to both of your social medias in the description of this video, or if you're listening on the podcast on that, and definitely the link to the Zoop, to go support it. Is there anything about the project we haven't talked about? I know you got a bunch of tiers, things like that, of some different things. Is there anything that you just want to hit on real quick before we wrap up?
Yeah, so there's an A cover, there is a foil variant cover, there is a black and white that's a full black and white issue, and you can get all three of those on one of the tiers. You can get each one individually. Everything is offered as double signed or unsigned, depending on what you want it. And then you can look at all the add-ons. It's a bunch of single issues of Canto. During the middle of the campaign, we've been told that there's going to be a big announcement for where Canto is going forward. So that hopefully will help the announcement. I think this will air just a couple days before that comes out.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of add-ons for single issues that will be double signed by us. And then by the time this goes to air, we will have announced all of our different stretch goals. We've got a 7,500 stretch goal. We got a 10,000 stretch goal. And those are all going to be additional swag things that folks can get, especially Canto fans can get by essentially just pre-ordering the book. We made all the early bird pricing permanent. So the main A cover is $12 and it's a 40-page square bound book. So it's a nice substantial book for $12.
Nice and square bound.
Yeah.
Which I will say that has been one of my favorite parts of this entire project, was the fact that we got to choose that kind of stuff. We decided early on it should probably feel like a more premium product. So we got to do the deep dive on what would square bound cost? How many pages do we need to actually do this? We've gotten a real crash course in actual comic making beyond just the creative end. And that, for as much work as it has been, it's been really cool to kind of go down that rabbit hole.
Yeah, so we've tried to offer a lot of different things because we're the Canto creative team. We offered a bunch of stuff with Canto. In addition to the feeding. So yeah, there's prints, there's commissions, there's all kinds of stuff. So folks have a lot of opportunity to support the project.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to take up too much of both your times. Is there anything else that, I know the focus for you right now is the feeding, but is there anything else that either of you are working on that you'd like to give a quick plug to, or say check out?
So I'm working on 2 books right now, Dungeons and Dragons Saturday Morning Adventures from IDW, which is a fun comic based on the Saturday morning cartoon from the 80s, which I watched and loved as a kid. So that's been a lot of fun. I'm working on another creator-owned book, Killer Queens. The volume 2 is currently coming out in single issues. So pick it up off the shelf, or if you don't see it on the shelf, ask your LCS to order it for you. And then couple things are coming down the pike. We also mentioned the anthology series with Legendary Comics, the Monsterverse, which is currently crowdfunding on Kickstarter. I believe it's hit its goal, so that's definitely going to be coming to life to a bookstore somewhere near you at some point in the future.
And anything for you, Drew?
My life revolves around Canto, and that's about it. Like David said, we're hopefully going to have an announcement about some stuff very soon. But outside of that, I am loaded up on work for the next year at least, between that and Monsterverse. So, the feeding is my immediate concern as far as release, but there's more good stuff coming down the pike.
And I'll also say, if you guys didn't last year, check out Specs. Go check that out from David. It was great. So I loved it.
Yeah, if you want to see what I do in the spooky realm,
so it was one of my favorites last year, and I'm gonna have to just have you on sometime to talk about comics again, just so we can do that.
It has a fantastic Canto crossover in it.
There's an Easter egg in there, Canto.
Mm-hmm. So
did you get it? Did you see it?
I did.
Oh, good. It's kind of, you blink and you miss it, but
yeah,
that was not even my idea. That was Christian is the artist on Specs, and they stuck that in there without me knowing, which I loved.
So, well, gang, David, Drew, thank you so much for taking some time to talk about comics with me. Gang, again, click the link of this video. Click the link. If you're listening on the podcast, go support the Feeding. It is a wild ride. I think you will not be disappointed at all. And with that being said, hopefully you can find some time to curl up, grab a book, and nerd out. Peace.